I was sound asleep. I heard a man's voice. Paul and I sat up sharply. He had scared the hell out of me. I reached for the bedside table where my Glock was. Paul, it's me. Dan, I'm sorry to wake you like this, but we have an emergency. Dan, who is Dan Jenkins. He runs Doris's office here in town. Dan, what are you doing in my bedroom? I have a phone, I have a doorbell. I couldn't use the phone, and I didn't want to be seen at the door. We have a really big problem, and we need to talk, Dan. I've only got one problem. Some decided to wake me up. I looked at the alarm clock at 2:45 in the morning. I'm sorry about that, but it could cost a senator a chance at the presidency. This is bigger than you or me. Dan, get out of my bedroom. Get out of my house. If you don't, I'll do one of the following: shoot you and call 911 or call 911 and tell them you're here to cover up some political blunder, or just physically kick your ass and let you explain why you were found beaten and bloody on my front lawn. He backed up a couple steps, which was a tactical error, allowing me to draw my gun. I pointed it at him. Hey, wait a minute. Don't shoot, Dan. Last chance, turn around and run for the door. I probably won't shoot. You got 60 seconds to get out. If you don't, I'll kill you until 911. I shot the intruder since you'll be dead. You won't have an argument, but this is 55, 54, 53. For some reason, Dan decided that my wife's potential political career was worth less than his life and hurried away. I wondered how long it would take him to call her team and her team to call me. I was coming to my senses, the difference between being awake but drooling and being able to string two thoughts together. Hell of an inconvenient time to start the day. But I got up, went to the bathroom, then into the shower, just a quick rinse, as I was wiping myself down. My phone rang. Yes, I said without emotion. Paul, it's John Schmidt, Senator John. I'm going to interrupt because I don't want to talk to you or your aide or the Deputy Secretary of the Interior or the President or anyone else. If the senator you're talking about has a problem, she should call me directly. I'm afraid that's not possible. Oh my God, let me ask you. Is she hurt in any way? Well, not physically, but you see, John, it was very nice talking to you. If my wife wants to ask me anything, have her call me. If you want to talk to me, call my office and make an appointment. I think I'll have some time in 6 or 7 weeks. I'm out in less time than it would have taken me to compose the text. My phone beeped, and I looked at the message from John. Please do not allow the press to communicate with you before you speak to the senator. It took me a little longer to reply. John, you're dreaming. If my wife wants to talk to me before the press gets to me, then time is running out. I'm not going to hide like some thief in the meantime. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. Being the husband of a successful politician is an interesting role in life. I have to say that my wife is an outstanding politician. She can get in front of any audience and sway them to her side. Our state is truly purple when it goes one way in some elections, and the other way in others. Doris Russell, my wife, was liked by most voters, not only in our state, but nationally. There has been serious talk that she could be a presidential candidate in this or the next election. I own a successful investment company right now. We're raising money from a variety of sources to fund startups with great success. These are high-risk investments, but I'm good at predicting success, at least often enough that buying our portfolio has yielded extraordinary returns. The downside, if any, is that I'm tied to our offices and travel frequently to evaluate companies seeking our financial support. I will say this: it is very difficult to maintain anything resembling a normal marriage when both parties are extremely successful. Being able to have children was the first sacrifice. In my opinion, they need parents who are involved in their young lives. I knew I was not up to the task, and Doris told me that if we were going to have children, we would both have to step up. We easily agreed that children were not our priority. The real challenge is maintaining any kind of partnership. You would think that when she was elected senator and moved to Washington, D.C., it would have made a big difference, but it really didn't. She could go home often to be with the voters. I could go there for long weekends whenever I wanted. Either way, we'd go a week without seeing each other. We're both 38, married at 25, and by then we were both on the road to success in the beginning. No matter how hard we worked, our time together was critical to that success. Being able to talk to someone who doesn't judge you and only seeks to understand is very important. It is equally important to offer advice to someone who may be leaning the wrong way and in a way that is perceived as trying to help. And of course, there's the purely animal attraction of celebrating victories or forgetting defeats aggressively. Between the sheets is another way to grow together, but here you are in your 30s, the demands of the job are increasing, and suddenly your body demands sleep at least once in a while. Something has to give, and slowly, but surely it turns out to be a partnership. Doris and I swore to each other that we wouldn't let that happen, as if we could stop the rain. What really pissed me off was the nature of politics. If about 60% of people think something is bad, a good politician has to learn to either agree or instead mumble something unintelligible over time. She tried to convince herself that this was better than that, even though I knew she thought just the opposite, and my advice made it harder for her, even though she agreed with me. She had to object because it was the right political move. We fundamentally disagreed. I believed that her best political future was to be herself. She was led to believe that her chances would be better if she took the right side on less important issues. Her manager, or whatever he called himself, began to gain more and more of her attention. The first major fight was about 2 months ago. She accused me of trying to sabotage her because I disagreed with one of John's opinions. I told her that if she thought JN was more on her side than me, then we were in trouble. Have you ever said something and regretted it? She took my word for it and believed me. I wanted her to realize that we were partners, and JN was leading her astray, and she heard that we were in trouble. So this morning, when some lackey on her staff came at me, I knew it was a tentacle from the conversation that we were in trouble. I wasn't going to hear it from them. I was going to hear it from her. My phone rang. Doris's ringtone. "Good morning," I said, not meaning it. "Why are you being so difficult?" "Doris, I instinctively want to hang up. What makes you think I'm difficult?" John told me. "Yeah, now you're going to tell me why John thinks I'm difficult. Screw John, all right?" Laughs. "You're right, I have a problem, and John convinced me it would be better if he explained it. I see, speaking to me now, would you say JN was right?" "No, probably not." "Okay. Now tell me what the big problem is. It wasn't like that between us." "You know that." She paused. "Did she want confirmation? Not from me. We used to rely on each other now more often than not. John gives me the best advice. I rely on him more and more." Another pause. I decide this is her hole. Let her keep digging. There's no easy way to say this. JN and I have fallen in love, still. Nothing amazing, though. Falling in love was disappointing. Silence seemed like the best option. We got caught tonight in Bethesda. We decided it was far enough away, and we're having dinner in a public place, and some reporter caught us kissing. He somehow took pictures of us undressing each other as we entered my hotel room. He let us know what he had. The story will unfold in the morning. We have to get ahead of it. Another pause. "You don't care? Don't you have anything to say? You speak in declarative sentences. I understood what you said. You didn't ask me anything. Are we really that far apart? You loved me once, I still do. I'm not the one who says I've fallen in love with someone else. All I can say is that I'm sorry. I'm even more sorry that I have to ask for your help to get through this crisis." "My help? Are you kidding me?" "No, I take that back. It's the new you legend over fact." "What's the legend, by the way?" JN thinks we can turn this around in my favor. There's this double standard. Men can have affairs, women can't. You and I can stand up in front of the press and say it happens, I'm sorry, and you forgive. We can sugarcoat it a little bit, make it part of our relationship, which we say remains strong. And is that so? I asked sarcastically. Is what? So our relationship stays strong. Well, that's the thing. We stay married, but not, if you know what I mean. No, don't try to explain. You want JN. Fine, you both have my blessing. You want to get married, fine. I'll try to forgive you, but I'll make sure you and JN are in the past. Your choice. I heard muffled conversation. Do you wonder what goes on in people's heads? My wife and I are trying to figure out if we want to stay married, and she needs to discuss it with her lover. Divorce will ruin me. I'm giving up on JN. Fire him tonight, I said in my best non-alternative voice. More muffled conversation. No. Then I'll apply in the morning. Another muffled conversation. Good, is that it? No, that's a condition to get us started. We're going to work with a psychologist and see if we can save our marriage. You're the one who lives in a political fantasy world. If we want to be married, we'll mean it. If you can't do that, then live with the consequences. Her tone has changed. I've always loved you. You're right, living a lie will never work. I'm so sorry. Can you ever forgive me, Doris? I'll be honest with you as always. I have doubts. It's intoxicating. You know, hearing your name in the office of President of the United States together. Muffled conversation again. Sorry, I asked John to leave his strategies, pushed my name so far I lost my head. I'm sorry. How long has it been since we fought? I decided that being president was more important than being married. Obviously, you can't have one without the other. This is a ringing endorsement. It's the best thing I can do right now. Give me a chance. I convinced myself that it was over between us, but that was wrong. And I knew it. John convinced me that I couldn't have the presidency, and you and he convinced me that I should actually let you go. Like I said, his strategies, it totally sucks. As I told you from the beginning, we had a little talk. We agreed that she would fire JN publicly in the morning, morning for everyone else. It was still just under 4 in the morning. She would say they had made a mistake, and her marriage was too important to her. She also said that she and I would address the press within the next week. All the morning newscasts ended with Doris and JN groping each other at the door of her hotel room. It was great political news. Within the next hour, it was announced that Senator Russell would make a public announcement at 9:00 a.m. Doris came out professionally dressed and said she would read a prepared statement and then take questions. I made a big mistake last night that I now regret. My campaign manager and I became too close, and we let it slip from our control. My political career is important. My marriage is more important this morning. I fired my campaign manager. I also spoke with my husband, apologized deeply to him, and we agreed to do everything we can to restore our wonderful marriage. He and I will be appearing before you in the coming days. I'll take your questions. How long did the affair last? It was an affair. It was a one-time mistake. Why fire John Schmidt, even though the mistake was mine? John and I crossed a line. These things happen. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not alone. When you make a mistake, you have to prove you won't make a similar one. That meant John and I had to break up, so you don't trust yourself. Yes, I trust myself. At this point, my husband has legitimate reasons to doubt me. One way to prove to him that it was a mistake is to fire Mr. Schmidt. He's an extraordinary talent. He'll rise to the occasion. The questions kept coming. She was good at dealing with them. They became less and less harsh. It was clear she was gaining an audience. It was Wednesday morning. I had work to do. We had work to do. We decided that our public announcement would be made on Monday morning. I was pushing for Friday, but that's a bad day for the news cycle. You looked good in the morning. Interview with a good follow-up interview. I think you'll be fine. I hope so. I've been working so hard. She replied, find us a counselor in Washington, D.C. I'll be there as often as needed. Okay, I'll also work on our application. The application seemed more important to her than the counselor. Perhaps that was natural since she was claiming what was probably the top prize in the world. Could I make my own? My question was more of a test than a sincere wish. I'd prefer it polished if you don't mind. Will you do it yourself with help? You know I'm surrounded by wordsmiths. When will you be in town? I've got a busy week. I don't think I can get in Monday morning. Why don't you schedule a press conference for noon? It'll give me time to prepare my independent study. Went as well as I expected. Monday came quickly. I flew to Washington, D.C. on our company plane and arrived at 7 a.m. Doris's staff was already there to meet me. We quickly made our way to her apartment at the door. We kissed. Oh, I love you so much. She said, I love you even more. I returned, here's your script. Let me know what you think. I read it through. I had to admit, it sounded real sincere enough, emotional enough, and with a real hope that we could live our lives as the loving couple we'd always been. My lines were to follow hers. Good afternoon today. I brought my husband, with whom we have been together for 13 years, to report on our progress. Since last week, I'm happy to say that we have a strong marriage that can overcome my indiscretions. We will be seeing a counselor twice a week for a while until we find everything we need to do to repair our relationship. She talked about it at length some more. She explained her mistake and how remorseful she was. It was very impactful after almost 10 minutes. She asked me to say a few words, unfortunately, for our presentation today. I did a little homework on my own. I regularly use private investigators to make sure startups are what they claim to be. I arranged for discreet surveillance of a senator and her lover. She could fire him, but he remained her lover. He snuck into her apartment after midnight on Friday morning. He never left, and I wondered where he was hiding while we worked on the presentation. I've always disliked political theater. When I said that her eyes got big, this was not part of my script. My wife and I made several agreements to save our marriage. Unfortunately, she hasn't honored any of them, and today I'm here to announce that I filed for divorce, and she's going to get it after this, what do you call it, introductions. I'd be happy to answer any questions. There was a stunned silence. I have to hand it to her. She's unfazed. I can't believe this. It's a political dirty trick. My husband was never going to take me back and set me up for this outrage. I smiled and walked away. Several reporters asked me questions, which I answered honestly. Who knows how much honesty will stand up to political truth? You can decide for yourself how this may end. I believe that truth always wins, and that Doris and John will reconsider running for dog catcher and hope to build a new career on this unlikely victory. 5 weeks after my last visit with my daughter Kim and my lover Mark, I was still euphoric from that encounter. Mark and I called each other every other day and had phone sex several times. Unfortunately, I couldn't visit our daughter during that time due to their busy studies, but we had already planned a longer weekend from Thursday through Sunday in the next 2-3 weeks. On Monday, my daughter called and said that her next semester must be paid within the next week or she would have to leave college. I said I would talk to her dad when my husband got home late that night. I asked him why our daughter's college money hadn't been paid yet. He looked me in the eye for a few seconds and told me that he would not pay for a disrespectful daughter who was stabbing him in the back. Stunned, I asked him what he meant. He simply said that he had learned that his daughter disrespected her father and perhaps even more disliked him. That's why he decided not to pay for her tuition. But I could pay for her from my account since it was late evening. I decided to call my daughter the next day, but when I tried to talk to my husband about it, he said he had said all that needed to be said. I went to bed angry with him. The next day I called my daughter and told her what her father had told me. She had no idea why her father thought she didn't love him anymore. She said she had always loved him, but I could hear the sadness in her voice. I told her I would take care of the money for school, but she should talk to her father. When I went online to our accounts, I found that most of the money in the accounts was gone. I couldn't find out where the money went. I started getting angry with my husband again and waited for him to come home. As soon as he walked in, I asked him where all our money was and how I was supposed to pay for our daughter. Well, he said, I have withdrawn my money. The money that is in the joint accounts is for the current payments on the house and your car if you don't have enough. Get a job. As for paying for our daughter's schooling, maybe one of your lovers can pay for that. Although I don't think your college lovers will have enough money, maybe you can charge them for your fornication or your regular lover will give you money. My legs gave out from shock and I had to sit up. What do you mean I don't have any lovers? I said as convincingly as I could. I felt like I was tearing myself apart, and I didn't know what else to say. I didn't realize he knew about my extramarital sex at all. My husband was starting to get angry. Oh, come on. I know about your steady lover. I also know about your college lover, Mark, and I know about all the college boys you with the support of my ungrateful daughter. I also know that you and she shared her boyfriend. I cried because I saw my marriage fail. I'm sorry, it was just sex. I whispered between sobs, just sex. Then tell me, when was the last time you had sex with me, and when did we make love? I couldn't truthfully answer that question. He continued, the last time you had sex with me was a week after your first visit to college, and it was just a pathetic sight, as you lay there with your eyes closed and I did all the work. But during the third act, you screamed the name Mark. That's when I realized something was terribly wrong in our marriage. And as for making love, that was so long ago, even I don't remember. I realized you didn't have time or need for me between all that phone sex with Mark. Yes, I have it all on video and audio, even your college threesome. I just sat there like a deer in headlights. I didn't realize that I had neglected my husband and my marriage for so long. I looked into his eyes and saw how hurt he was, what a terrible wife I had been not. That I have any interest in having sex with you after your threesome, who knows what diseases you have now, and our daughter even encouraged you to give about our marriage. She hasn't spoken to me once since she moved into the dorm. She even ignored my texts a few weeks ago. Now you know why I won't pay her tuition. She needs to get a job. Maybe she can prostitute herself, like Mom. Maybe together you can earn enough to pay for college. He said it with pain and anger. I just sat there and cried. Now I'm going to get some sleep. Over the last couple days, I've moved most of my stuff into the guest room. I'm not surprised you haven't even noticed I will sleep there, as I see no need to pretend I sat there for a long time, or at least it seemed like a long time to me. Then I called my daughter, even though it was late, but I needed someone to talk to, and I had to tell her about our problems without any greeting. I just cried on the phone, Kim. Your father knows your dad knows about Mark, about all the sex that was there. He even knows about my lover here, and he knows about your involvement, which is why he won't pay your tuition. Oh, Mom, how does he know? Do you have a lover at home too? What about Mark? What's going to happen now, and who's going to pay for college? We heard him. We've both hurt him very badly, and I don't know if our marriage will survive. He has said hurtful things about both of us, and honestly, I can't blame him. I don't know where he hid most of our money, but there is no way I can talk to him about it now. I have to let him cool down and stay obedient. Maybe I can save our marriage, but I wouldn't bet on it at this point. I'm not sure you should call him right now. He told me that you've been neglecting him since you moved into the dorm and even ignoring his messages. So please stay calm. Oh, and tell Mark not to call me. I can't see him or any of the other guys anymore, and I don't think your boyfriend Bob will ever be welcome here. My life is falling apart. There's no other word for it. I had it all, a loving husband who provided for both my daughter and me in every way. He made enough money that I didn't have to go back to work after our daughter Kim was born. We weren't rich, but we had a comfortable life with a nice home, and I didn't have to worry about money. Okay, sometimes I had to argue with my husband, but most of the time I got my way. We had a varied sex life, but it had dwindled in the last few years because my husband had gotten promoted several times and had to work late more often. Maybe that was the reason I was vulnerable to the advances of my longtime lover, Billy, with my high libido. I thought I could have a lover without hurting my husband. I thought I could have my cake and eat it, and my husband wouldn't suffer for it. It would even improve my personal life with him. How silly that sounds now. Then came the time when our daughter moved away to college, and I visited her there for 2 weekends. The first weekend I met Mark at a fraternity party I attended with my daughter. I spent time in bed with him, and my daughter even appreciated it. What followed was 4 weeks of phone sex with Mark and masturbating, thinking about him during. This time I also met up with Billy. But I didn't tell him about Mark or my weekend. What I didn't realize was that I was completely neglecting my husband on my second visit to college. I met Mark again and had sex with him and about a dozen of his friends throughout the weekend. My daughter knew everything and was happy for me. And we both didn't think much of my husband, her father. We were infinitely selfish. Another 5 weeks after my second weekend away, my life fell apart. My husband stopped paying for college and told me he knew about my lover, but my downfall didn't end there. I spent the rest of the week in a fog. I called my daughter several times and we cried together. I can honestly say that I never wanted to hurt my husband. I just didn't think about what would happen if my husband found out. Today, I realized that I was living in my own fantasy world where I could have everything. My daughter said she was coming home for the weekend and we should sit down and talk to him. I wasn't sure if it would help me, but maybe it could repair her relationship with her father. Mark called once after that, but I disconnected him. Even Billy, who I saw usually twice a week, didn't cross my mind. He texted me a few times asking to come over, but I told him once that I had issues to work out and I would get back to him later. My husband was not showing up at home in the evenings. At first, I thought he was having sex with other women, but then I saw sports clothes in the hamper. I remembered that I had seen it before, but I didn't think about it then. Well, that shows where my mind was. Then the weekend came. Kim came over Friday afternoon and we talked. I even told her about Billy, the one secret I had kept from her when my husband arrived late that night. My daughter ran up to him, hugged him, and yelled several times. I'm sorry. He just patted her on the back and said, "Weck talk in the morning," and went to the guest room. I know this indifference hurt her, but she said she understood. After a sleepless night, we met in the morning at our dining room table after looking at my daughter, and for a few seconds, he simply said, "Who wants to start talking? What do you both have to say about this mess?" My daughter and I had discussed this the night before and thought it would be best if she mediated despite her role in this, Dad. First, I want to say that I'm sorry we hurt you so much. We both, Mom and I, truly love you, and that has never changed. We know that our actions show something different. My husband only grumbled but didn't say anything, so my daughter continued. You know that I was always my mother's best friend, not just a child. She shared a lot of her life with me, so I also know a lot about your marriage. Yes, we even talked about sex and your sex life. At these words, my husband looked at me surprised and angry. I couldn't look him in the eyes for long, so I lowered my gaze to my hands. I remembered what I had told my daughter over the past few years, and it didn't paint a good picture of my life with my husband, worse than it was. My daughter continued, my mother told me that over the years your sex life suffered. You started working longer hours and were often tired. I know that she started using toys to fulfill her sexual needs because she didn't want to pressure you. I didn't know that she had an affair with Billy a few years ago. She told me last week that she started exploring her sexuality with him to improve your sex life together. Until then, she spoke in a normal voice but looked at me accusingly. But looking back, I never saw any improvement. At least not that she told me. She always told me that she was sexually unsatisfied and didn't get attention from you. That was the main reason I agreed to her affair with Mark on her first visit. I thought it would fulfill her needs in the long run and not hurt you in any way. I knew she had been in contact with him over the following weeks, and I even knew she wanted to meet him again. However, I did not know how intense their calls and conversations were. I found out after talking to Mark. Yes, I talked her into meeting him again the second weekend she came to college. It wasn't meant to be a long-term affair. I knew she'd had sex with more than just Mark, though I didn't know about the threesome the first night, but after that I just figured it wouldn't hurt anyone if she let her hair down all weekend at those words. She lowered her eyes and blushed, but continued, "Yeah, I let her my boyfriend Bob." Somehow it seemed normal for the bond between my mother and me. After she finished, we sat in silence and pondered what she had said. I began to cry and realized that it would take a miracle to save the marriage. After a long pause, my husband turned to me and coldly asked if I had anything to add. By way of explain, I couldn't speak, so I just shook my head negatively. He waited a few more seconds to see if I would change my mind. Then he leaned back and determined my future. Let's summarize. My wife had her long-term affair because I had to work long hours to feed my family. She wouldn't talk to me about it because she didn't want to hurt me. Instead, other men thinking it wouldn't hurt me, she wanted to explore her sexuality by having an affair with Mark, instead of talking to me. She also became for over a dozen frat boys to fulfill her sexual needs. With the support of my daughter, she even slept with her daughter's boyfriend to get closer to her. When he put it like that, it sounded really awful. I shamefully leaned back in my chair and let the tears flow, but I didn't think for a second that they would have any effect on him. After a while, he spoke again, addressing his daughter. "Let's get something straight. Your mother had a good job before she got pregnant with you. Don't get me wrong, the pregnancy was planned and I always wanted children. That's the reason we moved to this bigger house for all the kids we planned, even when I argued that this house was too big. But she counted that she would go back to work after the planned children went to school and contribute to the household." I sat there in tears and remembered that time, a time when we were happy. It's true, I wanted that big house and to fill it with kids, and I really wanted to go back to work after you were born. She stayed home and took care of you. After a few years, I wanted more children, but your mother decided that one was enough and that she didn't want any more. I never forced her to have more because I thought it was her decision in the end. When you went to school, she also decided that she didn't want to go back to work and would focus on you growing up. It was okay at first because I was making enough to live a good life. There was just a little problem. Now we had a big house that I had to pay for, and your mother didn't go back to work. In itself, that wouldn't have been such a problem because I was doing well at my job and making good money. However, since your mother stayed home, she had to fill her free time, especially after you went to school. Oh boy, I knew where this was going. I never realized how bad it was. Her hobbies eventually cost a lot of money. I don't want to explain what your mother spent our money on. I don't want to repeat her bi-weekly visits to the beauty parlor for a few $100s, or her shoes, purses, and dresses that she used maybe once over the years, and I don't want to mention her new car that she had to replace every 3 or 4 years with all the extras. Of course, she even spent some of the money I earned on her lover. While I got for Christmas a gift certificate, her lover got an expensive watch with personalized engraving. At these words, my daughter looked at me in surprise. This was also something I hadn't told her about. It made me feel even more embarrassed. You may wonder why I didn't say anything. In fact, I had said something from the beginning. I had several conversations about money with your mother, but I kept them away from you. She always promised to cut back on her spending. Well, that would last a few weeks, and then she would start spending again. After a few years, I stopped discussing it. But I had to work longer hours to finance your mother, and of course, I don't need to tell you what hobbies you've tried over the years, and I'm sure you have no idea how much they cost. Your mother always wanted the best of the best for you. Over the past few years, 70% of our money went to you and your mother. With the remaining 30%, I paid my expenses and maintained our nest. Your mother once accused me of spending $1,150 on a tennis racket, while she spent $1,400 on a new bag in the same week. And I'd really like to see your mom and all the lingerie she bought from Victoria's Secret or Agent Provocateur, but I guess that's reserved for lovers. My God. I thought, how much he knows. I've never seen it this bad. I never knew our financial situation. The money was just there to be spent when I bought sexy lingerie. I seemed to think of my husband, but I never wore it for him even when he asked me to. He interrupted my train of thought by continuing. So, my dear daughter, you will realize that money doesn't grow on trees. I had to work for it, and I had to work long hours to bring in extra money. I like my job, so it wasn't a big problem for Mimi. Of course, my working long hours had to affect our sex life after working 10 or more hours a day. I don't have the energy to fondle your mom for a long time before getting down to the main part. She has always needed me to seduce her with caresses and fondle her body for long periods of time. Don't get me wrong, I love foreplay, but I don't always have the energy for it hearing about our sex life. My daughter started to blush. She wasn't ready to talk about sex with her father, even though she had started it herself. Oh, come on, my dear daughter, there's no reason to blush if you talked to your mother about our sex life. You must have known all this. Did your mother tell you that at the beginning of our marriage we had quite an active sex life? We did it often and sometimes several times a day. That of course diminished after you were born, which was fine with me. But what your mother was never at least with me was really adventurous. Introducing new ideas wasn't really appreciated, so I stopped trying 10 years ago, and yes, and plain vanilla sex has diminished altogether. Hearing it from him in that way, I wanted to object, but I couldn't. Everything he said was true. He tried to be more adventurous and try new things, but I refused. I didn't want to be thought of as a prostitute. What a joke that is now, how my lover or the frat boys saw me. I didn't care, so I was willing to do things I wouldn't do with my husband. So my dear daughter blaming me for our poor sex life and using that as an excuse is not working. Did your mom ever tell me anything? No. Did she ever introduce new sexual practices? No. Did she ever agree to new things introduced by me? Almost never. About 90% of our intercourse was with me as an active partner with your mother, lying on her back. So don't tell me it's my fault she's a to others. The last tirades got louder and louder, and I leaned back more and more. He took a few deep breaths and continued more calmly. I don't know what you both expect from me, but there will be changes in all of our lives. You can think about your future until tomorrow. Then I will decide what happens next. With these words, he looked at us for a few seconds that seemed like hours. Then he got up and left the room. Half an hour later, he came downstairs with a small gym bag and said he would be back late in the evening and we didn't need to wait for him with dinner. Kim and I sat at the table looking at each other, but immersed in our own thoughts. I had always considered myself a person of high morals and a high sense of family. But coming face to face with the truth, I suddenly saw myself for who I really was. A selfish, cheating self-awareness is the first step to self-improvement. But damn, it hurt. But what hurt the most was that I had hurt my husband. Somehow I didn't feel sorry for myself, not one bit. But I did feel sorry for my husband and my daughter, how. And especially when, had I lost my morals, that was something I had to decide for myself whether my marriage would last or not. I don't want to go into details, but as I talked to my daughter the rest of the day, I knew our relationship had gone badly. Alright, she didn't openly blame me, but I could tell from her wording and tone that she was blaming me for presenting her father as a bad person. She wanted a relationship with her father, and I thought she had a great chance I would help her in any way I could. However, I didn't know if my marriage was mortally wounded or if it could be saved. I knew it would never be the same again. And I had to make many concessions. I knew I loved my husband even though my actions didn't show it, and I knew I respected my heartfelt husband for all he had done for us. I never let anyone seriously berate him. I have to take the blame, take responsibility for my actions, and start giving without expecting anything. The next Sunday morning began the same way it had the day before. My daughter and I were sitting at the table when my husband arrived before either of them could speak. I said, "Please let me begin before I lose my courage." They both looked at me in surprise, and when they didn't object, I continued, "My dear husband, I am sorry that I have caused you such pain. I don't know when I lost my way, but please believe me when I say that I have always loved you. Be assured that nothing you did or didn't do was the cause. The blame lies entirely on me. I don't know why I acted the way I did, but I intend to find out with professional help. I know you're not happy with our daughter right now, but please understand she is as much victim as you are a victim of my selfishness and the lies I've told her, and lies in the form of my omission of important facts." With the last sentences, they looked at me with big eyes. I don't think they were even expecting something like this before losing my composure. I continued, "Even if you don't want to see me anymore, please make peace with our daughter. She needs you as a responsible father to get her back on the right track. She needs you a lot more than she needs me. At least right now, I know I have no right to ask, but if you find it in your heart to give me a second chance, I'll do anything to earn it. I know you'll never forget what I did, but I hope you can forgive me sometime in the future if you go on without me to be happy with someone else. You forgive me at least so that you can be happy with that last sentence. I lost my composure and ran upstairs to my bedroom. I wasn't going to say that last phrase because I didn't want to think about life without him, but right at that moment, all I wanted was for him to be happy with whoever he was with. It took me 15 minutes to calm down, and I went downstairs. "I'm sorry," I said as I sat down again. Everyone seemed to be deep in their own thoughts. But then my husband straightened up. "I thank you for your confession. I didn't expect it to be so serious." After a few seconds, he continued, "I don't want to beat around the bush. I've already consulted with a divorce attorney with that revelation." I leaned back in my chair. I knew my marriage had broken up and all I had to do was wait to be served. I knew I wouldn't resist. I almost missed what he said next. Unfortunately, the laws in this state are not really in my favor in a divorce case. After considering all the possibilities with an attorney, we've come to the conclusion that it's cheaper to keep you here. I looked up with surprise and hope on my face. He looked me in the eye, but there was certainly resentment in his eyes. But this was the first time I had a faint hope of saving my marriage, but I knew it was going to be a long road and I was willing to take it. Of course, there will be some major changes. First, I've canceled all of your credit cards. You will both get debit cards that I will put a small but appropriate amount of money on each week. You should use this money to pay for groceries and some personal expenses. I know you need to make some serious adjustments to your spending, but this time it will be up to me. Financial hardship didn't scare me as much, even though I knew I would have to adjust. I was used to having money when I wanted it. I'll have to get used to it. But the most important thing is your infidelity. You know, you hurt me with your cheating. And even though you told me you never lost respect for me, I feel insulted. I hope you don't expect physical affection in the foreseeable future, because at the moment, touching you doesn't appeal to me. This hurt me very deeply. It was like a slap in the face. I had always wanted to look good, and it was important to me to know that men desired me. But now, the man I truly loved didn't desire me, didn't even want to touch me, and it shocked me. But when I felt my face turn pale, I realized that it wasn't my body itself that made me unattractive. It was what I had done with my body. I had allowed other men to use it, even though only my husband should be allowed to use it at this point. I felt dirty myself. Not only my body, my soul felt dirty too. I knew I had to cleanse my body and soul of deceit and selfishness. One more note. I expect you to get a clean bill of health. I know you've had unprotected sex with guys, and I don't want to take any chances at those words. My face flushed red with shame for all my lust. I didn't think about my health, much less the health of my loved ones. I would kill myself if I passed on a few STDs to my husband. This may be the hardest part for you, but I don't want to abstain from sex. We've had less in recent years, and then just boring sex. We've already talked about the reasons why. However, you had a lot of adventurous sex with your lover. So now I have a hall pass for the future. I won't just sleep with any woman, but if I find someone worthwhile, I will have sex with her without regret. I won't flaunt it in front of you, and it won't be someone in our circle of friends. Preferably some stranger. I'll keep it a secret, but I'll tell you if you want to know. Oh my God, he intends to cheat. Several feelings came over me: anger, pain, hatred, humiliation. With that last feeling, I suddenly realized how he felt. When he found out about my deception, it didn't make me feel any better, but I knew I had no right to complain. I just leaned back. Of course, if you want to continue this marriage, you must remain faithful. Otherwise, I'll divorce you. I can't take any more disrespect. Maybe I should have sex with your lover's girlfriends, but as far as I know, only 3 of them have steady girlfriends. He looked at Kim again. Bob has a girlfriend, but I'm not sure I want to have sex with my own daughter. Kim looked at him wide-eyed. And your longtime lover, Billy? Well, he doesn't have a steady girlfriend, but he has 2 other married women he sees regularly. You're not his only woman. He's a player who likes to have married women and put horns on their husbands. There is at least 1 marriage that fell apart because of him. About 2 years ago, this was something new. I didn't think much of Billy or what he did when I wasn't with him. There was no love on my part, only carnal lust. Those are the rules for the future. If you can't live with them, you'll have to file for divorce yourself. With these words, he stood up and left us sitting. A long silence followed as we pondered what we were facing. The only problem for me was the realization that my husband might be cheating on me. But what choice did I really have? I could be well compensated in the divorce, but at what cost? I love my husband, and I didn't want to lose him. I knew I had to make myself desirable to him body, and even more so soul. I had to win him back. The rest of Sunday, we hardly spoke at all. Kim left for her college on Sunday night. I didn't know what surprises the next few days would hold for me on Monday night. An excited Kim called. She told me that Mark's fraternity had thrown a party that weekend. One of the girls there, who had been drinking heavily, had been raped by several guys. She reported the rape. That same day, someone called the police and reported a major drug distribution at that particular fraternity. A drug raid on the fraternity building found many drugs of all kinds, date rape drugs, and videos of various groups on the fraternity brothers' computers and cell phones. It was Mark's fraternity, and according to Kim, a lot of drugs were found in his room as well. I looked at my husband and saw the corners of his mouth lift up. I had a feeling that he knew about all of this, before maybe had set it all up. When I asked him, he simply told me that there was no way he would have organized the rape of an innocent girl. It was just a coincidence, and icing on the cake. The college has shut down this fraternity, and its members will face hard times. Their future careers are not looking so good on Thursday. I received another unexpected call. They had found child porn on Billy's office computer, and further investigation revealed several videos of him with various married women. There were none of my videos, but since I was one of his frequent contacts, I was interviewed. My husband supported me during the investigation, and after a few days, I was acquitted. A few weeks later, Billy called me from detention. He asked me if my husband had planted the child porn since all my videos were missing. I didn't even know they existed. He had gotten an anonymous letter that said, "Don't have married women." I didn't ask, but I knew my husband had a hand in it. I know he has a friend who is great at it, security. I just hoped this friend hadn't seen my videos, since I knew he was getting revenge on my lovers. I was just waiting for the axe to fall on me. Epilogue: a year later, I am happy. I'm still married to my husband, and I love him more than ever. Of course, it's been a rough year. I immediately went to a counselor to understand myself, a full medical exam. Yes, I also got a clean bill of health, revealed a hormonal imbalance that may have started a long time ago, apparently shortly after my pregnancy, and I began treatment psychologically. I was diagnosed with a mild form of shopping addiction. These things combined with a high libido and less time with my husband may have led to my cheating. I could cite this as an excuse, but deep down I knew that I was the one making the cheating decisions. I made sure my husband knew all of this, but I never presented it as an excuse, and I made sure my husband knew it too. A few weeks later, I found a job in my profession at a small startup. My boss is a woman. I don't want any misunderstandings with my husband, who was cheated on by her husband. I told her all about myself. And at first, she was very strict with me, but she saw how I wanted to be a better woman. So gradually, we became good friends. The work doesn't pay that much money, but it is satisfying. My husband told me that I can keep the money, but I contribute it to his account. I live on his debit, which he has increased over the last year, but I have never used it fully except when I bought him something as a gift. My daughter has rebuilt her relationship with her father, and they are closer than ever. All I want is for them to be happy. My own relationship with my husband took longer to get better after just a few weeks. A friend mentioned that my husband had become a real stud. He cut back on his work hours and started a fitness program. Within a few months, he became very fit. Over the summer, our daughter was visited by several of her college friends. They seemed to flirt with him more than necessary, and he enjoyed their attention. Was I really jealous? Of course. But surprisingly more than that, I was proud that he was attractive to young women. Did he sleep with any of them? I don't know and don't want to know. After all, he had a hall pass. It was 3 months before he came back to our bedroom, and another 3 months before we started having sex again. It was when I caught him off guard in the bathroom that he fought back. I wasn't angry, but I was horny. I told him that he didn't need to fight himself off. He can use my body any way he wants. That was the first night of intimacy. With that, we became real husband and wife again. Our daughter felt it immediately when she visited us and was happy for us. A year later, we went out to dinner as a couple. After dinner, he told me he was canceling his own hall pass. If I wanted to know anything about what happened during that time, I had one last chance to ask, and he would answer after this evening. He will never say anything more about it. I thought about it for a minute and then just said, I don't want to know anything about the past, but I ask that in the future, everything that happens between us.